You're listening to Mark of the Maker. Hey everybody, I'm Mark Steiner and you're listening to Mark of the Maker. This is episode 92 of the show. We have an excellent guest with us and that'll be a fun time. Let's make sure we have our regular complete crew with us this week. So we have Mr. Michael Birch.
I am here.
We have Mr. Sean Kendrick.
Hey, hey.
And we have Mr. Tom Crine.
Hey, everyone.
I know Tom was snacking earlier. I heard the fork on the plate.
Yeah, but I'm not right now. I put it aside for a few minutes.
For a few minutes. He's probably eating pie over there.
Mm-hmm.
I wish.
Yeah, pie would be awesome right about now. Okay. First thing we got to do is thank our friends on Patreon, patreon.com. That's a spot where people go and can pledge a couple bucks a month to help us out. That keeps all of our microphones in motion and paying for server stuff and equipment when it breaks, which it does, and all kinds of other stuff. So thanks to all of you who are supporters for us on Patreon and help us keep the show moving. If you want to join us, you can find us there. Just go to patreon.com and search Mark of the Maker. And then I think Michael is going to give us a little intro from our sponsor.
Yeah, you all know who we're going to talk about. George Palagione at American Metal Exchange. You can find him at amxinc.com. He's got all your exotic stuff. He's got all your titanium, tons of weird stuff, damascene steel, other fun stuff. You got your free shipping. You got a lot of shit in one place. Hit him up, amxinc.com. Thanks, George.
A lot of shit in one place. I think that was part of what the copy that he sent to us.
Yeah, he was like, make sure you say shit. I was like, okay. I mean,
lots of shit in one place.
Mm-hmm.
We got you, George.
Yeah.
Thanks, buddy, for your help with the show. We really appreciate it.
Need more marketing tips, hit me up.
In case you need to write any ad copy, Birch is your man.
Mm-hmm.
Michael, you want to introduce our guest?
Oh, it's Nick Swan. I think a lot of you guys and gals are going to know this man. He's been around for just a little bit nowadays.
Welcome to Mark of the Maker, Nick.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, Nick.
Your pleasure, man.
Nick's got some semi-pro radio voice going. I like it.
Ooh, yeah. You know, I do have a face for radio.
We've been told that multiple times at shows. You guys really all have a face for radio. Yeah,
that's good.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So welcome to the show. I know you've listened to the show before, so you are prepared to be disappointed in how this all goes, so that's fine. Our usual thing is to tell us like way back to the beginning, but before we do that, tell people about what you do, what you make, and kind of what your brand is.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Nick Swan. I'm a knife maker here in Arvada, Colorado. That's it's right between Denver and Boulder, right here on the Front Range of the Rocky Mountains. I do just stock removal. I'm a knife maker. I wouldn't say full-time. I'm kind of a full-time dad, and I just make enough knives to bring to a couple shows each year. I don't do orders or have books or anything like that.
Okay. You make other stuff too, right? You're in the widgets game as well a little bit.
Yeah. I make a bottle opener and a couple other doodads, but mostly just knives, just the tactical folding knives and slip joints and stuff.
Right. The slip joints seem like they were pretty popular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's cool to see them come back around and see this kind of next wave of collectors kind of gravitate to an older style.
So let's hop in the Wayback Machine together, Nick. And we'll go all the way back, way back. So did you grow up in Colorado? Were you?
No. My wife Annie, she's from Colorado. She's born and raised here. Annie is the backbone of Nick Swan Knives. She's the backbone of the Swan family in general. She keeps us all in line and makes sure everything goes smoothly and keeps me on track and keeps me focused. And but I was born in Central Michigan. I'm pointing to my hand right now, like you can see it.
Yes.
From a tiny little place called Vestaburg.
Okay.
My parents grew up there. My dad's dad ran a company called Alma Products. I think they made AC compressors for GM.
Okay.
Mom's side of the family was a silo company. They built silos for farmers there. And my dad was slated to inherit the Swan family dairy farm. So that was probably not super exciting for him. And unfortunately, about the same time I was born, I don't know if this is an ill omen, the whole place burnt to the ground. The farm, the barn, the house, everything.
Wow.
Burnt to the ground. Yeah. So he had this newborn and no job and no place to live. So he joined the U.S. Army.
Okay.
And did a 29-year career as an Army aviator. And, so we moved around quite a bit. I don't remember the first few places, but the first place I do remember was Fort Rucker, Alabama.
Okay.
So I would tell people I was from L.A., from Littler, Alabama.
Nice.
And it was cool. I grew up in on military bases my whole life, as a kid. And we did 10 years down in Fort Rucker. And that's a long time to stay in one place for an Army family.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, all my friends, every year or two, all my friends would move off. And I was an only child, so I had to make new friends like constantly. And my mom worked full time too, so I was just full blown latchkey kid. 10 years for a military family, that's pretty tough for one place. The way he did it, my dad was taking these like 1 year overseas tours. So Korea, El Salvador, Honduras, Korea again, Panama. I think he did Korea a third time. So I didn't see my dad a whole lot growing up. He's off. My mom's working. It was up to me to entertain myself, and I was always super interested in how things worked. So anytime anything broke, I'd convince myself, well, I'm the man of the house. I'm gonna have to fix this thing.
Right.
I'd tear it apart, and all these extra parts laying around, and it still doesn't work, Mom. Sorry.
Right.
Just fascinated with the way things worked. And my favorite show is, How It's Made. I've probably seen every single episode.
Yeah.
And then shortly behind that is How It's Actually Made, which is a YouTube parody. I don't know if you've seen it before. It's this comedian who just dubs over old episodes of How It's Made. It's hilarious.
Nice.
You definitely have to check it out. But just tearing things apart and trying to figure out things worked. And when my dad was home, we were on the lake for 10 years straight, every weekend. Tent camping, and then get a little pop-up, and then maybe a little nicer camper the next year, and then a little better camper the next year, and then maybe a ski boat. And we were campers. We camped every weekend. We were always on the lake, and, never used sunscreen. It was the 80s, so we're just covered in, I have all these freckles. I'm just covered in sunburns and blisters as a kid.
Yeah. Nice. So your Michigan time was really short when you were little.
Yeah. We were only there maybe a year or two, and then he joined the military, and we were off. I know we'd always come back to visit. I've still got a lot of family up there, but I don't think they really cared for the cold, so we stayed in the South for most of my upbringing.
I think you get used to that pretty quick, especially after being in Michigan for a while. It's like, oh yeah, this is way better.
Yeah, so we lived in Fort Rucker, Alabama. Got into skateboarding and playing guitar and just doing the normal kid stuff. You're out. I would get up, get myself ready, get to school, do school, come home, get a snack, and then out until the streetlights came on. That was, we were in the woods. Just
yeah.
Who knew where we were at? No cell phones, no checking in. Those were wild times.
They were different for sure, right? It was like,
yeah, I just can't imagine if my kids were just gone all day. I don't know. I'd be freaking out.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I absolutely remember my mom only kind of joking, right? Don't come home till later kind of thing. Like have a good day and do not hang out here.
Right.
Yeah. But it was very normal.
Yeah, that was the Wild West. We were on a military base. Back then there weren't like armed guards at gates or anything. It was an open post. You could drive in and out, but we felt like we were in our own little world, just kind of sheltered. Yeah. And I didn't really realize until a few years later we moved off base and I entered the actual public school system, because I'd only been in military schools. And it was kind of a reality check, like, oh, this is how the real world works. This is different.
Not quite as under control.
Yeah. And the discipline that we had, it was pretty structured, and it was different going to public. So I kind of struggled going to public schools.
What drove that, going from military base school to public school? Based on where you were, or?
Yeah, I think my mom was sick of living in quarters.
Right.
And demanded that we move into a house. So we moved off base, and we were only there for a few years. And I think she really got sick of him, being out of country. Yeah. And he said, that's it. We're all moving this time. So we moved to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, like Clarksville, Tennessee. It's just northwest of Nashville. And I was there through high school, and more of the same, just, skateboarding, playing guitar, chasing girls. Graduated from Fort Campbell High School. And actually just before that, a few months before graduation, we're at an assembly, and the guidance counselor is like, all right, so you should have received your 2 acceptance letters from the 3 schools that you narrowed it down to last year, from the 5 schools that you visited as a sophomore. And my buddies and I are looking at each other like, what? Yeah, we want to go to college, but we didn't do any of that stuff. So, grades weren't awesome, but good enough to get into college, but too late to get into college. So it was, hey, you're accepted, but not until the spring semester. And my dad had always joked, when you turn 18 or, graduate high school, you're gone. Like, pack your stuff. And I thought he was joking. He was not joking. He was dead serious. I graduated high school and he moved into my room. Like, he had already moved all my stuff out and moved in.
Wow.
I was like, okay.
That's hardcore.
So I need a job and a place to stay.
Yeah.
And I don't have that until the spring semester starts. So luckily my friend who had also got accepted, his family did have a place for us to stay, but it was in Ohio.
Oh, wow.
So we moved to Ohio, and we started our new jobs at the Rigid Tool Factory in Elyria, Ohio. And I didn't appreciate it at the time. We're 2 dumb kids from high school with 0 experience. They set us down in front of these CNC machines and just kind of, we weren't operating them by any means. We were literally just monkeys pushing the green button, but like pretty expensive production equipment we're sitting in front of, third shift with very little supervision, almost no training. And at the time, so we're think of a crescent wrench and the moving jaw part, you're spinning the thumb barrel, and the moving part, the moving jaw is what we were making. And, we start with this raw blank, and all we're really doing is just loading, 4 or 5 blanks into a fixture and hitting go, and then turning around and loading the machine behind us. And by the time we get that one loaded, the other one's blinking, ready to be loaded again. So pretty mundane, not really operating CNC equipment, but, on third shift, the QC, the quality control guy, comes around like maybe once a night. And he would be like, hey, so, if these parts don't pass through this no-go, little jig that we push the part through to see if it cut to shape, if it doesn't, just add a 001 here. Just make this small adjustment. So I say I didn't learn a whole lot. I learned a ton. I learned the value of a decimal point real quickly on that machine because, it didn't fit. And I'm like, okay, I got this. Just make this adjustment. And I probably put in 0.1 instead of 0.0001. And I probably moved this whole fixture into this. I think they were using these diamond coated grinding wheels, and I'm sure none of it was cheap. But I turn around, start loading my other machine, and I can just see like flames and sparks shooting and people running as I'm just destroying whatever's in the machine. But so we learned a lot. And then it was time to go to college. We moved down to Florida, took me to St. Augustine, Florida. We went to Flagler College, which at the time, it was previously an all-girl school. So on paper, it read, private college on the beach, 8-to-1 girl-guy ratio. And I think it was 10 grand for the whole year for room and board, tuition, books, everything.
Oh, wow.
It was the dream. What we didn't know was that it was an art school, liberal arts school.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 of those 8 girls probably aren't really interested in guys. So none of that really panned out for us.
Right.
Super cool school. I thought I wanted to be an artist. In high school, I was into skateboarding. In the late 90s, like skateboard shoes. And you think like DC shoes, the big tongue. Like it kind of took on its own style. And I probably drew more shoes than I know I've hand drawn more shoes than I've drawn knives.
Wow.
But I thought I wanted to design shoes.
Huh.
And I get to college and my roommates are both art majors. And it became apparent real quick that I was not destined to design shoes. These kids were killing themselves in these art classes, like up all night trying to get these projects done. And I learned pretty quick that maybe that wasn't for me. So luckily they had a business administration degree that I was able to move into and kind of change gears because art school wasn't for me.
I think sometimes people have a gross misunderstanding of what art school is like.
Yeah.
I think it's not the cakewalk that people assume it is.
Yeah, I'd had like art classes in high school and done pretty well, but I think that teacher might have just been kind of phoning it in.
Right.
It was a reality check getting to college level art classes.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. So Florida, man, you're bouncing all over the place, at least on the eastern half of the U.S., right?
Yeah. I'd stayed in the Southeast for most of the time. So I decided art school wasn't for me, and I needed to come up with something. And I'd grown up flying. My family, a lot of them are pilots, and we had a plane in the family that it didn't mean a lot to me at the time. I'm one of those kids where I would get in the car and immediately fall asleep on a road trip. Right. So it's not like I was like flying the airplane or really doing much. I pretty much crawled in the back and went to sleep and woke up when we were there. But my dad was an Army aviator. He flew helicopters his whole career, and his dad, he ran a flight school on an airport. And his dad, the dairy farmer, he did all the crop dusting for the local farmer. So
okay.
It was like kind of the lineage. At this point, it would be like 4th generation pilot.
Yeah.
And my dad was kind of pushing for it and said, look, I'll pay for the flight school if you'll do it. So, it never really excited me, but at that point it was like, okay, this is the year 2000, a 20-year Delta captain, commercial airline pilot was making like $300K. Yeah. They were retiring at 20 years. They were living the dream. And I was like, man, that's the job for me. So then I decided I wanted to be a commercial airline pilot. And I started flight school there in St. Augustine, Florida. I got a job at the airport, little regional airport in St. Augustine. Super cool airport. They actually have their own aerobatic box. A lot of the world, Patty Wagstaff, she has her aircraft's in the Smithsonian. She's based there. At the time, Dale Snodgrass, he was Top Gun in 1986 when the movie Top Gun came out. Okay. More carrier landings than any other human on the planet. Super cool place for aviation. So I got really big into it. I was still going to college and working on my pilot's license, and I'd just gotten my private, and the next progression is that you move into your instrument rating. And I remember walking into class. It was a sociology 101 or something. And sit down, and the teacher's late. It's like, what is going on? And the class is getting antsy. And then he comes in and he's like, I can't even, how can I teach you about society on what's happened today? He's like, just go home. And I was like, what the hell? So we leave, and I walk into the rotunda, little common area, and there's this wood, the old wood cabinet TVs. And just as I come around the corner, I see the second plane at the tower. And it was, like you'll never forget where you were and what you were doing. But man, so the aviation industry after that, I'm working at the airport. They're like, hey, don't come in. Everything's locked down. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how long this is going to take. So, I've just kind of invested myself into this new career, and that whole industry over those next 2 years just really spirals. Those pilots are getting laid off and furloughed, and they're certainly not making the money they were then. And it's like, this is a massive investment to become a pilot. We're talking like $250,000 in debt just in the flight training. So it's like, okay, now what? And I'm working at the airport still. At this point, I'm like parking aircraft and pumping gas. And like my friends that had started the job with me, they're graduating from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and on their path to become professional pilots. And here I am, just kind of treading water. And we're at my girlfriend's graduation, and she's going on to become an airline pilot. And he looks at me, he's like, "Are you gonna keep pumping gas for a living? Is this what you want to do?" And it was like, okay, like reality's setting in, like time to probably do something with my life.
Yeah, sometimes it hits you over the head, the whole reality thing.
Or someone needs to tell you, and I needed it.
I'm
pretty not real smart, so sometimes people have to tell me these things. But I had made some really good contacts at the airport working there. There was this like kind of a joint law enforcement hangar where Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the Florida Department of Fish and Wildlife, and then the local sheriff's office, all three of them had aircraft in this hangar on the field. And, over the course of the years, just hanging out with the pilots and talking to them, and you start to kind of get that little bug, like, man, that's pretty cool, hearing the stories of the cops and the stuff they're doing. And I thought, this might be for me. Maybe this is it. Maybe I need to be a cop. And started that whole process, which takes forever. I was, working all day at the airport and then trying to do the academy at night. It's like 880 contact hours or something. And you get like 3 hours a night going. So it takes forever to get this certificate. And that doesn't do anything for you. That doesn't even get you an interview. It's then up to you to pass a state test and then apply for the job to just start to become a cop. And I'd say 3 of the 30 of us in the class got a job. I'd say 10 of those 30 probably weren't even hireable. They were just it was run by the college. They were, just accepting anybody into this academy, regardless of, criminal history or if they could ever actually become law enforcement. So it's kind of wild to see, but got fortunate, kind of in the right place at the right time. And that was like 04, 05 during the big housing boom. And at that time, the sheriff's office budget was tied to property taxes. So as all the housing industry boomed, so did all of the local law enforcement agencies' budgets. So it's part of a pretty big wave of hiring. So big that within probation's maybe a year after being on the road, they're making me a field training officer. I'm like 23, a year of experience, and now I'm training the 21-year-old kid, like kids training kids.
Right.
Yikes. It was wild.
So by this point, Nick, like we haven't really talked about the knife thing at all. Were knives part of your youth? Like I assume you had some kind of pocket knife. You sound like you had a very similar running around doing whatever when you were young kind of thing.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah,
Did you have a knife as far back as that time frame?
I can tell you a couple early knife stories that I can remember. But for the most part, my big knife hobby didn't begin until, I was 30 probably.
Yeah.
I can remember, my grandpa, he was a big smoker. He was probably in his 50s by the time I can actually remember him, but he by then it was to, cigars and pipes.
Yep.
So he always had a 3-blade trapper in his pocket, like a case or a queen or something. And he always had a pipe knife, with a little tamper and a little pen blade. And God, I wanted that knife so bad. I was probably 7, probably in first grade. I wanted it so bad so that he came to visit and I stole it from him. And I took it to school to show my friends because this knife was so cool. And the first kid I showed it to on the bus to school told the bus driver, and the day was, I didn't even make it into the school with the knife, but I got to try to track that one down. That's a really cool piece.
Yeah.
But let's see. So, knives, for me, you get the Swiss Army knife for Christmas, and then 2 days later they take it away because you cut something or somebody.
Right. Cut a hole in the couch, whatever.
Yeah, I probably wasn't to be trusted. I can remember another time I was probably 12 and had maybe the Bass Pro Shop or Cabela's or something, and I'm like, hey, Dad, I want to order Grandma this. It was like a tin can, like a food can, but inside was a stuffed animal. But on the front, it would say it's something like a horrible animal you'd never want to can, like a koala bear or something, canned koala bear. But inside was like a stuffed animal koala. And I thought it was clever. And I'm like, Dad, I want to get this for Grandma. When in reality, I wanted his credit card so that I could order a pen that had a knife in it, concealed in it, and this 3-pack of throwing knives that you would put on your wrist. Because what 12-year-old doesn't need a 3-pack of throwing knives on his wrist?
Yes.
Yeah, so borrowed the card. This is back in the mail order days. So 6 to 8 months later, I'd forgotten about it. And these 2 packages of knives show up. And my dad's like, hey, what are these? They're in my name, with my credit card.
Ugh.
So I didn't even get to throw it or even take it to school and have it confiscated. So I guess pretty negative memories of knives prior. Probably why I don't have much early history with them. But when I did become a cop, my dad gave me a knife that he had been issued.
You understood the criminal mind a little better.
Yeah, he was smart enough to know not to. But he handed me, it was a Microtech amphibian button lock auto. And I don't know how he got the knife. It was something he got through the military, but he gave it to me, and I carried that knife for years on the road, and I'm so happy that I didn't lose it. It bounced across the street, and I'm sure I used it to pry things open that I shouldn't have, and it still runs awesome. It's still, you hit that button, it'll hit hard enough to just take it out of your hand.
That's a cool blade.
Great knife.
Yes, you still have it. That's awesome.
I do, yeah. I hope I never lose that one. But
yeah,
got that one. I've got one of my grandpa's old trapper slip joints. I carry that one a lot. But that Microtech got me into, oddly enough, into the EDC forums, and before that even was the Bushcraft USA forum.
Okay.
It was silly. I was living in Florida, the worst place to do anything outdoors, bushcraft related. You don't want to go out in the woods in the summer in Florida and camp. It's horrible. But that forum kind of introduced me more to the custom knife world. That's kind of the first glimpse I got into it. I bought my first custom knife there. It was what is it? It's a Skookum Bush Tool, Rod Garcia SBT. Super cool knife. I guess Mors Kochanski designed it, and it's kind of a legendary bushcraft guy. But got back into, I think I might have seen a Dick Prenicky video, Alone in the Wilderness, and it
That's
really
an
clicked
awesome
with
video.
me. Yeah. If you haven't seen it, go find it. Order the DVD.
The books are good too.
If you can find it.
It's out there.
Really good stuff. That really got me into bushcraft and kind of the wilderness survival and, figuring out how to do things. It was cool to see the guys with the most experience and skills bring the fewest items,
Right.
like a pound of coffee and a fixed blade. That's it. And be good for a year.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome.
So got into that, got into got into custom knives through Bushcraft and then the EDC forum. And then I saw a picture of a Lucas Burnley Black Betty zirconium Cypop. And that did it all for me. It's so wild when you see a design, a knife or a doodad or whatever, and it's just, you don't even know what it does or what it's made of, but you have to have it.
Yep.
And for me, that was the thing. And I'm like, I have to have this. How do I get it? And the guy said, well, the only way to get it is to go to a show or be on Facebook, and you might be able to get one on secondary. And that's kind of what started the whole Facebook rabbit hole for me.
Yeah.
It's that little bottle opener.
So for sure, though, like if you were on EDC forums, you were way hip to gadgets and pocket stuff and whatever already, right? Or at least aware of it.
Yeah. I was big into the Peter Atwood, all the little doodads he was making, and just kind of the business model, and the chase was so much fun for me. So I guess I was a collector for a few years before I even started making, and man, it was a lot of fun back in those days. I'm not sure it's still fun. I don't get to spend money on that kind of stuff anymore.
Yeah, the Atwood scene was like its own microcosm of people and gear and, right? I mean, and hugely successful thing for Peter, right? I mean, just like
I think so.
Crazy deep collector market.
I think it's still going.
Yeah.
Good. That's great.
Yeah, I think he's still making stuff. He's not on Facebook anymore, I don't think. Or unless he has his own forum.
Yeah, I think it was Planet Pocket Tool. I think there is one.
Is there?
I don't know if he has much part to play in it, but
he's a good dude.
Yeah, I've never met him, but I loved collecting his stuff. And, working patrol on the road, we're eating in our cars, and the Sporcula, I don't know if you guys ever seen the Atwood Sporcula. I ate hundreds of meals with that little tool. So it's something as simple as that, like just really cool stuff. It really clicked with me.
Right. Yeah, you were one of the rare people that actually used Atwoods to do stuff.
Right. I mean, a lot of it was beads and bottle openers, but it was fun stuff. And it was kind of like priced right. And
somehow it seemed priced right? Like it was in a price range where you could talk yourself into spending that much money on it, right? Compared to, whatever, it's probably really expensive, but
it actually set the tone for pricing for me with the wife. Cause if something would come in, it's this, it's $100. Everything was $100.
Right.
Everything that came through the door. It's $100.
Yeah.
It's a full blown custom. It's not $100, but she didn't find that out until a few years later. I was collecting,
that was your first wife, right?
No.
Just kidding.
So we moved into the EDC stuff and moved into Facebook and Instagram, and that kind of opened up, opened my eyes to the much larger picture. Forums were cool, but man, what a pain in the butt. Like having to find somewhere to host pictures and then sitting there and, hitting those thresholds and, now my pictures are gone because I don't pay for it. And Facebook was a nice change at the time. It's definitely changed a lot since.
It's absolutely crazy if you're back in the forum day when you think about how easy it is with an iPhone.
Yeah.
I can remember buying some kind of little gadget camera to video stuff to try to upload it onto the forums, and it was such a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
But
being able to instantly post and instantly notify people was a total game changer.
Yep. So after like Bushcraft USA, which was a cool forum, I was on there quite a bit. It's pretty cool. Where did you go after that?
They brought me to Facebook and the Burnley group a lot, and your group too. It was cool to see all of the Facebook kind of. It was, you like this, you might also like this group too, and this group, and this group, and this group, and this group, and all of a sudden the floodgates had opened, and about the same time, I decided, okay, I need this. I need this custom knife. I need this Lucas Burnley Pelican. It's this big swoopy blade, probably not super practical for many tasks, but just the sexiest knife you've ever seen.
Fixed blade or folder?
It's a folder, yeah.
Yeah.
Big, it had carbon fiber handles and tie bolsters and a hand rub blade. And it was on Arizona Custom Knives, and I had to have it. And it was $1,400. And that was a big jump for me from a Chris Reeves or, the Microtech I had to this, or even the custom bushcraft knives I had were like $300 or $400. So this was a big step up for me. And it was on Arizona Custom Knives, and I wanted to know more about it. So I went to the website and I go to look up their phone number, and it's a 904 number. I'm like, that's weird. That's my area code here in Florida. And I'm thinking, well, maybe this is like a cool new website that like spoofs your location so you don't have to pay a long distance call or something. So I call it up, and then I'm like, wait, I look at the address and it's like something US 1 in St. Augustine, Florida. I'm like, what on earth is going on here? So I call them and I'm like, hey, where are you guys at? Like, where in Arizona are you? And they're like, oh no, we're not in Arizona. And I'm like, well, this is the address. Like, I work this zone. Like, I patrol this zone. I've been patrolling this zone for years. Like, you're not here. I had no idea that it was this nondescript, unlabeled building with no markings, like in a business park. You'd never know. I've been driving past it for years. Right. I've been patrolling this area. I had no idea they were there. So I went in. They showed me the knife. The first time it opened, I was in love. Like the sound, the feel, the lock, everything was amazing. I had to have it. I bought the knife, and more importantly, the relationships I made there at Arizona, Ryan Thompson, Andrew, Julie.
Such good people.
God, the best. Mm-hmm. Ryan and Andrew, the best people. They took me in, and they don't have customers come in normally. Like, they're in flip-flops or barefoot or
right.
They're a very casual workplace. So for them to let me come in, and I don't know if the badge had something to do with it, but they let me in, and they kind of took me under their wing, and they gave me carte blanche to the place. And it's like walking into a candy store. I mean, every maker you can imagine has a little yellow tub in the back, and there's probably 1 or 2 knives in it. So, I mean, you can go in and look at any knife you can imagine. I mean, and this obviously is not available for everybody. This was something years ago that I was able to do, but very fortunate to have been able to have access to that. And, I could check out the knives that I really wanted to see. And honestly, it saved me some money in some instances. I'm like, oh, wow. Okay, I'm glad I got to touch this beforehand. I don't know if I'm as interested now.
Right.
And on the other, it was a double-edged sword, though, because then you pick up a knife. They said, hey, I need you to look at this guy's knives. And it was Richard Rogers. He handed me a tangent and an arc, and just blew me away. Just the form, the function, the simple elegance it nails it. He doesn't try hard, but everything is super sexy and just dialed. And he's like, this guy's amazing, but he doesn't really have a lot of exposure, and it's unfortunate. What do you think about hitting him up and maybe trying to start a Facebook group? And I sent Richard a message, and I'm just this guy out of the blue. I'm sure he had no idea who I was, but eventually wore him down, and we started the Richard Rogers knife group on Facebook back in 2014. And like 2 months before that, I had bought a knife grinder. I had decided that, man, collecting's really cool, but I think I can do this. Like, I want to give this a shot. So I'd bothered Chris Williams from Wilmot Grinders for a few days. I mean, he was so patient with me. He spent hours on the phone, pretty much walking me through how to make a knife from start to finish over the phone.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Before I agreed to buy one of his grinders. He went the extra mile for sure. And I love his grinders. I've got 3 of them. They're really good stuff, but I'm going all over the place now. Sorry.
No, that's good. That's what we do. I think it's interesting. So how did that, first of all, the Burnley Pelican, greatly underappreciated knife, right? A lot of people don't even know what that is, but yeah, it's very pretty. Like recurve, super fat belly with like a little almost hawk's bill tip, right? Just such a cool shape. So yeah, very, very, very cool knife. And it's really neat that you had that experience with Arizona. You know, Arizona gets a bad rap, right? They have this thing where people are like, oh, Arizona custom knives is this example of greed in the industry or whatever. The people are awesome, right? I mean, they're really nice people. And you know, Ryan, how could you not think Ryan Thompson is a nice person, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's like the nicest human being I know, maybe, right? I
100% agree.
So, I mean, you know, and Andrew's super fun and helpful and full of information, like way more information than many people realize, right?
Yeah.
And exposure and hands-on experience with these super, super relevant historical pieces. Yeah, those guys get a bad rap that they don't deserve, in my opinion. And, I don't know. High five to the Arizona.
Very humble. I love them. They're great people to work with too.
Yeah. I mean, they're in the game, right? So of course they're doing what you do when you're a knife dealer. That's part of the ecosystem. But I've had such great experiences with them, and they have some great pieces that, right? A massive collection of stuff. And I think I'd heard a couple times that there's stuff back in there that maybe doesn't even end up on the website somehow, right? Because there's such a depth of stuff there that, you know, it's like, oh, wait, shit, we have this? Yeah, let's put this on the website, right? So that's awesome. It's really, I don't know, like a mini museum.
It is. It was awesome. It was a double-edged sword, though. I spent a lot of money there, but they also gave back, you know, exponentially in starting me down this path.
Yeah.
You know, introduced me to Richard. You know, we started the Facebook group. 6 months later is the Blade Show in June in 2015. I don't know if he invited me or if I just told him I was going or how it all worked out, but I got to, and I'm doing air quotes now, help him with his table that year, that first year at Blade at 2015 for me. It was my first big knife show as an attendee, and to see the whole process and to be introduced to the, you know, to makers by him, and man, what an amazing first year, first Blade. I got to see Tom and Luke and Chris Williams do awesome. The Blade University that year. I think it was just like maybe an intro to knife making, but it was so cool to see three guys do completely different things and achieve the same result, but with their own, you know, take on it.
Right.
Luke's up there, you know, just the grinders turned way down to nothing, and he's just barely feathering this, like, you know, epic, crazy plunge. And then Tom walks up, you know, with a blank and burr, and then flips it over and burr, and it's red hot and it's done.
It's like it's quite that pop. Yeah.
It was just so cool to see two completely different ways. Tom, how many knives have you ground? Are we talking like tens of thousands?
In my lifetime?
Yeah.
Oh, I have no idea. Tens of thousands, yeah.
Okay. I thought so.
That was last week.
Yeah.
No,
he is tooting his own horn finally.
No, it's I don't know. We've thought about it, but I mean, this next year is 30 years, so it's been a few years.
That's awesome. If anybody's looking to become a knife maker and going to the Blade Show, Blade University, super cool. It was a dream come true just to go and meet, you know, some of your idols in knife making, and to bounce questions off of them was even cooler, and to see them make stuff, man, like what an experience. If you can skip the line and the first come stuff to go to a class, go do it. If you're interested in knife making, very cool.
Nick, what was the spark for you? What was it that took you from, hey, this is really cool, I'm, you know, doing collector guy things, right? This is really pretty, I want to own this. You'd buy stuff. How did you, what was it that got you into the concept of maybe I could do this, right? Or this, it's not a jump that everybody makes. What was it for you?
Yeah. So like I said, when I was a kid, I was always tearing stuff apart, and just super intrigued with mechanisms, and just recently I started watching these vintage watch revival videos.
Yeah.
Don't go down that rabbit hole. It's now I think I want to be a watchmaker. Like, but the cost of admission for the tooling and the Swiss watchmaking tools are pretty pricey. So
Right.
I've always had a hobby. It's always been something with an engine. In my 20s, I would buy, basket case motorcycles. I started with a 71 Hodaka dirt squirt that a coworker sold me for $50 in a cardboard box. And 2 weeks later, I had it, it was just a single cylinder 2-stroke, super basic, real easy. I just cleaned it up, tore it apart, put fresh gas in it, and it kicked over. And I took a crappy black and white picture of it and sold it on eBay, I think 2 weeks later for like $800. And then I took that $800 and bought a slightly nicer motorcycle. And I just kept, working my way up. It was a fun hobby for me to see these old things come back to life. And then to sell them for a profit was even cooler.
Right.
And it just kind of fed the addiction. And I kind of worked my way up into like Jeeps and then Land Cruisers and, just building cool cars and bikes was fun. But you kind of move to the next hobby. And I'm looking at this knife that I just, I've spent $1,500 on this custom knife or something. And it's amazing, but I think I can do that. Like it just I'd invested all this money into collecting, and it was a great investment because I was able to take those knives and, okay, I'm going to sell this one and I'm going to buy a grinder, and I'm going to sell this one and I'm going to buy a heat treat oven.
Right.
And once I had amassed, kind of the basic requirements, a drill press, a heat treat oven, and a grinder, I just kind of jumped in, and I'm in a 1-car garage in Florida in the summer, with a box fan blowing on me, just drenched in sweat. And I filled a Craftsman toolbox, like a rolling toolbox with big drawers. I filled the first drawer with blades that will never see the light of day. Just grind them out. They're terrible. I throw them in the drawer. And, I just bought like a mile of steel from New Jersey Steel Baron or something. I didn't even know what to get. So I'm just getting one of everything and stupid thicknesses. It's like 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch. Like, what are you going to do with that? And then the worst part is, I moved shop to shop, and I moved this Craftsman toolbox full of blades from like 4 different shops over 4 or 5 years. I'm like, why am I moving this stuff? Yeah. I finally just threw it all away. I don't know if I told myself, maybe I'm going to come back and like fix those grinds up and sell it. And no, that never happens.
Yeah.
But I just slowly started selling my collection to fund this new hobby of knife making. Like it was an addiction. I was working the road, like half the year on, half the year off. So I was off a lot of days, and those days I was in the garage just filling that toolbox full of abominations, really. But
wow.
So I did that for a while. And then I went to that Blade University class, and I learned what a VFD was. Because for the last 8 months, I had a fixed speed, 3,500 RPM, just screaming. It didn't matter what belt you had on there. It was taking material off, or it was going to burn your blade. And it was a trial by fire, with that grinder. But then I learned what a VFD was. It can control the speed and just turn it way, way, way down. And I probably grind way slower than most guys. I start at like 30%. Like it takes a while for me. But mistakes happen a lot slower when I'm grinding slow. So.
I grind at 30% a lot of the time.
Nice.
30%, and that allows you to put the pressure on to keep it in those grooves.
Yeah, I like to go nice and slow. But went to that first blade, went and helped Richard. It was more just the experience, getting to see, how a knife show works from the maker side of the table. Really cool the way he does his lottos, and I got to learn a lot of the stuff that I didn't have to learn by trial and error, which helped a lot. And I don't know if he invited me out to his ranch, or once again I invited myself out, but we had talked back and forth about, I'd been asking a million questions about knife making, and I wanted to make a folder, and I'd made a couple and they were just god awful. all just manually machined. And I did not know what I was doing. I didn't have anybody really teaching me. I spent a lot of time on the, Steel Dust Junkies forums and just pouring through the information I could find. But going out to Richard's shop just for that weekend, we were able to put a folder together from start to finish. And I learned more in those 2 days than I had in the year of trying to, bang my head into a wall to make a knife by myself. So if you can find somebody local, get into their shop any way you can and be a sponge. Just try to learn as much as you can. It'll save you so much time in trial and error.
Do you think that time with the single speed grinder and all of that sort of wood shedding time, I mean, okay, maybe it could have been a little shorter and still you've gotten value out of it, but do you think there was any value in doing that stuff? It seems like there is.
100%.
Of learning what not to do, that kind of stuff.
Yes. I learned a lot of what not to do. I remember Annie, my wife, she bought me a 10-inch grinding wheel, so I could hollow grind at this point, because I'd been just doing flat grinding poorly, and I wanted to try the hollow grind. And I didn't really think about the math behind it. There's only so high you can grind up, depending on how thick your blade is, before obviously the other grind is going to hit it in the middle. So I walked up to the grinder, and it's a 10-inch wheel. I've got like an 1/8-inch piece of stock, and I put this like 2-inch high hollow on it, and I flip it over and like barely start to grind, and I'm already like hitting the middle, like the knife is disappearing before my eyes. And quickly learned how hollow grinding works by riveting blades. But just one more for the drawer. Until I was able to spend some time with a real knife maker, and Richard and Sally are just the most generous, helpful people on the planet. He has taught me everything I know about knife making, and any success that I've had, I owe purely to them. Learned so much. That first weekend, we put a couple prototype folders together. And then like a month or two later, he had cut a few more parts for me, and I made those by myself in my shop, and then joined him in Vegas that year for the USN Gathering. I think it was G7.
Okay.
And Larry was nice enough to let me put a couple knives on his table, and this is all happening. It seems so crazy how quickly it's all happening, from just making these garbage knives in my shop to now making knives with my absolute idol of knife making. And now I'm sharing a table with him in Vegas. Even just for a few hours to put some knives out. Like, it's just crazy how fast it all happened.
All in a very short period, right? Like a year or two, or what? Or less?
Yeah, I had picked up a grinder, and then, maybe a year later, I've got a folder on a table at a show.
A big show.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. And I try to learn as much as I can, and study as much as I can, and listen as much as I can to whatever mistakes he's made, so I don't repeat them. And pretty much anytime if he'd said, don't do this, I just wouldn't do it. I don't need to learn that mistake again. I just won't do it.
Right.
So just kind of following the formula as best I can. And like same with heat treat, like there's no black magic or wizardry to it. These guys put in a lot of work to get these numbers exactly where they're at. Like, just follow the recipe. Yeah. So I've always tried to do everything I can in my own shop. I don't like relying on, like a heat treat place to send my blades back or not warp them. So I've tried to amass the equipment that I need to do as much as I can, short of hardware, and like I'm not going to forge Damascus yet, but try to get it all done here.
Yeah.
So what was that folder, that first one you made?
It's the like my flagship folder, the Signet model that I still make to this day. It's funny, he actually sent me the original sketch that I had sent him years ago, and it's good for a laugh. Like, it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Like, I'm really glad we didn't run with that. I'm really glad he's, like, hey, maybe you should think about moving this line here a little. And so obviously huge influence on my career and my style and the way I make parts. Everything I do is kind of modeled after the way he does things. And just an incredible teacher. And I don't know what you do to give back to a mentor. I know you probably won't hear this for a month or so, but if you guys got any ideas? Like, what the heck do I do? How do I give back to this guy for like changing my life?
Yeah.
I try to pay it forward and kind of take guys under my wing and teach them
That's
what little I
exactly
do
what I
know
was gonna say.
to just keep kind of, keep the knowledge moving through the generations,
Yeah, pay it forward. That's the best thing you can do.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we talk all the time on this show about this whole concept of a knife maker family tree, right? Where the reality is that many makers had some mentor or influence or somebody that set them on a path or straight up taught them how to do things, or maybe a handful of them, right? And it's pretty cool to be able to look at some of that and be able to trace it back. Because it's a long chain, right? There's not a lot of completely self-invented, never got anything from anybody kind of guidance makers,
No.
right? So
I definitely stand on the shoulders of giants for sure.
But
Yeah.
you probably wouldn't hate a box of cookies either.
I was gonna say a custom firearm, but whatever.
Right.
Cookies are good.
Yeah,
who
he
doesn't
would
mind
like that.
cookies?
Okay. Yeah, I think my wife will approve the cookie purchase for sure.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Nick. I think most of us are the same way. We literally are standing on the shoulders of giants. The knife makers from the 70s and earlier. It's crazy to think what they put up with and how they didn't quit. I mean, they didn't have YouTube or the internet or any of this stuff to find stuff or sell knives, and they persevered, It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I think keeping that community, I mean, that's what they had. They didn't have social media, so they had to go and make these relationships. And I think it's important that we keep it going.
I get
Definitely
frustrated.
had to work.
What's that, Michael?
I'd say they definitely had to work a lot harder than we do. That's for sure.
That's for damn sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, I get frustrated when I go on Macecraft and it won't take my credit card for whatever reason. I have to call my order in, and it's like, oh, the bother. I mean, they've got
Right.
every thickness of micarta and all different sizes and colors and G10 and everything else in one space or place, Or if I'm ordering from Alpha, it's like, oh. But it's like, it's so easy for us,
Yeah.
It
A
really
million
is.
places to find, how to finish it exactly how you want.
Yeah.
Very first world problems.
You don't have to
Yeah.
write a letter to your knife making buddy across the United States. You can just get on
Yeah.
Facebook in the knife message and be like, hey, how do you guys do this? Or what are you using? And boom, you've got your answer.
Ahoy, hoy, Mr. Crine. How doth you do your knives?
Yeah.
Right. With your quill pen.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, and I haven't mentioned Tom yet, but I've been bothering him for years. Learned so much, not just the knife making side of it, the social side of it. Tom is always, you send a message and just a few minutes later, you've got a response. And I think that's for everybody. It's not for me or you guys. Anybody messages him. So learned so much, not just the knife making questions. I know I've been bothering you for years about, how do I do my maker's mark? How do I etch this? How do I grind this? How do I finish this? But just the stuff that I've learned just from watching you guys work has been super helpful.
Yeah. It's hard to, and I don't answer all of them all the time. Sometimes they fall through the crack. I get so many, but it's like, it doesn't take that long to reply. And I try to do that. And sometimes, like I said, it doesn't always happen, but.
Well, I'm glad he responds to you because he doesn't respond to us. I'm just saying.
Hopefully I didn't throw you to the
I
bus.
got in trouble. I got in trouble for just putting like a thumbs up. So I have to use words now. And I try to do that.
We had an intervention with Tom. that he needed to use his words.
Thumbs up wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
But it is easy when you're like working and, oh yeah, I agree with that. Thumbs up. But I'm using my words now.
He is. He's done a fine job, I have to say. No, we've talked a couple times on the show about Tom doing his daily post and staying close with his customers and actually listening and doing lots of Q&A stuff, right? That's always fun to watch. And I don't think Tom gets enough credit for the amount of effort he puts into the social media thing.
Agreed.
I think it matters a lot to his audience, right? The collector base loves that, and you do a good job with it, man. And I applaud that. Lots of makers don't. It works for you, right? It doesn't work for everybody else necessarily, right? But you do a good job with it, and people really appreciate it.
Well, I didn't do a good job with it for quite a while, and I decided to try to be intentional, and I think that makes a difference,
Yeah.
But thank you. It's fun.
And a huge amount of work. I know how much work you put into it. It's a full-time job in itself, just that side of it.
Yeah. So you got to tell us the story about how do you end up from being a cop in Florida to a wife that grew up in Colorado. How does that all happen and then end up in Colorado?
Yeah. So about that same time that I'm meeting Arizona and getting a grinder and, coming to Richards and doing shows. Let's see. How do we make this transition? So when I started as a cop, it was a lot of fun, driving fast, and I was a single guy, didn't have kids. That lifestyle was what I wanted at the time.
Right.
And then, I met Annie, and we had twins. We've got twin 8-year-old girls. At the time, I've got these like infant babies, and that is probably what changed my life.
Yeah.
I was, flying the helicopter for the sheriff's office at the time. I was, in car chases, getting shot at. Like, it was dangerous stuff. And like my priorities really changed after I had the kids. And, that wasn't for me anymore. So I took a desk job. I moved into investigations. I was a detective, working Monday through Friday. I was home on the weekends. I got to see my kids. I was still on call for flying at night, but I got to spend a lot of time with them, and I realized that's what I wanted to do. Like, I saw how quickly it was slipping through my fingers, and I'm like, I gotta make a career change. So
Yeah.
we both really loved. Her family's in New Mexico and Colorado, and we'd come out to visit, and we're like, a lot of times you go on vacation, you're like, okay, I'm ready to go home. Like, this is enough. I miss my stuff. It was the only place we would go where we're like, I don't want to go home. Like, can we extend this trip somehow? So we decided that we were moving to one of those two states, and the job search was on. And the first one of us to get a job, the other one was going to quit and watch the kids. Because daycare for 2 kids is about what I was making being a cop. So
Yeah.
luckily for me, she got the job first. And
Nice.
it happened to be in her hometown where she was from. We were actually on our way to our very first knife show. So the New York show would be the next show after I'd shared the table with with Richard in Vegas. So we bought a table in New York. They were in November at the time, and we were both actively applying for jobs out west. And we're sitting at the Jacksonville airport waiting for our flight to New York. And we're like, all right, let's have a drink. We're at the airport. So we have a drink, and then the flight gets delayed. It's like, okay, we'll have another drink. Why not? We're getting on an airplane. We have nowhere to be. So she has this big margarita, and she just finishes it, and her phone rings, and it's a Denver, it's like a Colorado area code. And she just color in her face drops, and oh my God, this is the job. And I'm like, like, you have to answer it. She's like, I've had 2 margaritas. I don't know. I'm like, it's perfect. So luckily, with a little social lubrication. She was able to nail the phone interview, and they invited her out for the final face-to-face. She ended up getting the job. So it kind of made the New York show for us. It was, she got that big job that moved us out west. And it was my first actual knife show with a table and like a full spread of knives. So it was a big show for us. It went really well. And we love the New York show. We just have all these memories now. We met some of our best friends and customers at that show that first year that are still, coming out to shows to this day. And it's just really cool, the relationships you make at these things.
Makes me sad that show's kaputs.
It's coming back. It's February. It's one day.
No, it's not coming back.
Okay.
Well, there was already a show in February in New York.
Oh.
And it's a Saturday only show. So
it does not work for you.
Yeah. And who wants to be in New York in February?
I'm going to try.
Yeah.
We're going to try too.
It makes me sad. Because
hopefully they can switch.
That was literally my favorite show, probably.
Ours too.
Yeah, the November New York show is a great show, no doubt.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully they can get back to it. But
yeah,
no, they're not gonna.
Stay positive.
No Kronk for you.
it's over.
Well, it's Saturday show only. I can't. There's nothing there for me.
Tom, but never say never. Where's your optimism?
I got none.
Maybe Steve will bring it back. Maybe somebody else will bring back a November New York show. Maybe.
Maybe.
No, man. Tom's over there kicking rocks.
Yeah.
Damn.
Oh, sad sack.
Yeah.
That one bummed me out. That was literally my favorite show of the year.
It was a great one. I give you that. I give you that.
Geez.
So you land in Colorado, and boom, game on.
Yeah. It was. Luckily, I'd worked for the sheriff's office long enough. I was vested. I was able to retire. So I'm 33. I'm retired.
Wow.
I'm living in Colorado. I'm raising my twin 2-year-olds, and Annie has an older daughter from her first marriage. She's 16 now, and I'm going to tell you, if you don't have a 16-year-old daughter,
buddy,
or if you're gonna have a 16-year-old daughter,
buckle up,
man. It's been fun.
It does not matter. They're all absolutely wonderful and challenging. It's just a thing.
Yeah.
That age is a trip. I'm with you.
So excited for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, your daughter's going to be a riot when she's 16, buddy. Hang on.
16? I don't think you're going to get that far.
She is going to, yeah, she's going to drag you through it all. I feel it.
I feel like she's already got a lot of attitude.
She does.
You
That's
think?
awesome.
Yeah.
Sassy. I'll take some notes for you, Michael. I'll
Yeah.
try to hand them off when I'm done.
Sassy.
I have a sassy daughter, and that time was really hard. And she's also like a badass 20-something-year-old woman now. And it's awesome because she does not play.
Good.
Right?
That's what you want.
She
yeah,
does.
exactly.
I mean, she does. She's fun, right? But she also knows how to turn it on. And then it's like, get out of the way. You don't want a piece of that. It's woof. So yeah, good for
That's
girls.
exactly what you want. You just have to live through it.
Yeah.
First step is to survive, and then step 2 is appreciate.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. Amy talks about that all the time. She's like, "Oh man, I love seeing her do well, and holy shit, I don't want to deal with when she gets spun up." Nope. No, that's a really good point, Nick. I think sometimes people forget. I had a couple of points where it's like, am I doing the right thing? Right. I was traveling for work when my kids were young, and I ended up doing all that stuff, but that's time you can't get back. Right. That's one of the things we talked about, like with the COVID thing, right? With people who had babies during COVID time or just before, and they're working from home and everything's turned upside down. And guess what? They got to spend a bunch of time with kids that they never would have had otherwise. 0% chance. And it gives you an appreciation that you can't get otherwise, right? I mean, good for you for doing it.
Yeah, and I'm going to try to keep doing it as long as I can. As long as these kids want to hang out with me, I'm going to be here so they can hang out with me.
Right.
But I'm just dreading that day when I know it's going to come, when they, hey, we'd rather go hang out with our other friends. Okay, I'll just sit here and pout.
Yeah, you're going to get kicked to the curb eventually, but.
Yeah, I'm enjoy it while I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, so retired from the sheriff's office. The wife, Annie, got a killer job here, and she's absolutely crushing it on her way to the top. I just hope she doesn't pop from all the, the stress.
Yeah.
Having the burden on her shoulders, but I just try to make enough knives to keep her happy. That's where I'm at. Hang out with the kids and make a couple knives.
Yeah. I haven't met your wife. I've met her and talked a little bit, and she definitely comes across as a strong woman, right? Someone who gets it and is ambitious and has a plan. And please step out of the way if you're not on the bus. That's awesome.
Yeah, she gets stuff done for sure.
Yeah, very cool.
Keeps me in line.
Birch, you got a bunch of questions that you wrote down. You want to try to work your way through some of them?
Ooh, we got a lot here. Ooh. So we talked about your stuff. So when did the CNC come into play?
Oh, yeah. So we moved to Colorado at the, we packed our bags Christmas Day and actually drove the whole family out here Christmas Day in 2015. So we got out here in 2016, and there's nowhere to live in Colorado. There's no houses. So we had to build, and that process took about a year. So we were just kind of moving from rental to rental. Meanwhile, I'm driving down to New Mexico to learn as much as I can from Richard and cutting parts on his machine and trying to finish as much as I can in his shop on really nice equipment before I come home to my, storage shed that I've moved from rental to rental since retiring.
Right.
Luckily, there were some really great guys here in Colorado. The USN group took me right in, and one of the guys had shop space available, and man, he said, there it is. There's all the outlets, go nuts. And I was able to keep making knives while we're building our house here, and just kind of kept things going for a few years. What was the question? I've already forgotten it. I'm sorry.
The CNC.
The CNC machine, yeah. It wasn't until we actually got our house built in 2017 that I took delivery of a Haas mini mill. Same machine that Richard was using. I think is it the same machine you have, Michael?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think the same. Tom might have a little bigger, better one, but pretty much all the same. And obviously that's a complete game changer. I was still using the CNC previously, but I was just relying on Richard and his machine to get the parts cut. So it was kind of nice because I already knew the machine. I knew the software. I spent that year, I went ahead and bought Rhino CAD, and I spent that whole year just trying to learn the software because anybody can push the button, just to get the machine going. A lot of it is in the software, learning the CAD, learning the CAM, the tooling. And Richard obviously was indispensable in teaching me all that he had already learned and, kind of trial and error taught himself. So that helped a ton.
I'm starting to feel like I need to go down to visit.
Yeah, you might swing by New Mexico.
We really enjoyed having Richard on with us. That was a fantastic interview, very interesting conversation, and just such a good guy.
Oh, for sure. Well, yeah, I think you did it the right way, learning the CAD and CAM and all that while you're getting kind of shown how the process works before buying. That was probably the smarter way to do stuff.
And that's not to say that I didn't immediately crash the machine the first week I got it.
Well, you got
so. Yeah. So I spent that year, kind of trying to learn the software, and I thought, okay, I need to come up with something that I can make in this machine to teach me how to use it, because I don't want to jump straight into folders just yet. So as long as whatever I make I can sell to pay for the material, I'll be happy. And that was the pull tab bottle opener.
Yeah.
Just a real basic, simple design. I looked at a beer can, and the pull tab on the top was 100% of the inspiration for it, but it opens bottles. So
Right.
the idea with the pull tab was I wasn't looking to make any kind of money on it. I literally, if it had paid for the material while I was teaching myself how to use the machine, I'd have been perfectly happy and then just moved right on to making knives. It ended up being way more popular than I ever expected. And I'd say those things probably have paid for the machine on their own. So very fortunate, awesome tool to teach myself with.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting thing, right? Because I think sometimes you'll see makers do projects like that as a machine uptime enhancer, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay,
yeah,
I'm using
keep
it
running.
I'm using it to make knives, and now I'm gonna, since instead of the machine sitting, it's gonna cut stuff like that. And so it's kind of an interesting thing to come at it the other way, right? As like a learning tool. Like you said, as long as you're not losing money in the process, you'd be happy, right? And then
For
boom,
sure.
it takes off and becomes a whole thing of its own.
Yeah. Super, super happy with how it all worked out. I still make them to this day. I don't know what to say about it. It was an awesome tool.
So I remember you posting pictures a little while back, Nick, of a new spot. Was that the house when you guys finished it, and maybe my timeline's blurred, or did you move since then? Since you built the original place?
Yeah. We built the place in 2017, and then we grew out of it pretty quickly. It had a 3-car garage, and I was using one of those bays for the knife shop, and then we had 2 full-size SUVs in the rest of the garage, and we were at capacity. We're on top of each other. My buddy Laren works with me in the shop, and it was pretty tight in there. So the business had kind of outgrown the shop, and we're looking around at shop space in this area, and it's a mortgage or double a mortgage to have a shop here.
Yeah.
And I really, my kids are pretty young, so I'm still at home with them. I'm driving them to school. I'm picking them up every day. I didn't really want a second mortgage and all of that overhead and, the to and from. And so I was looking for something, shop space where, we needed a bigger house, a bigger shop. And this place came up, and we never in a million years thought we could get it. And I don't know, the stars aligned, and here we are. It's an amazing place.
So how big is the shop that you're in now?
It's about 1,900 square feet. It's like I think it's a 9-car.
Yeah.
It's the dirty room in this shop is the size of the entire previous shop.
Right.
So everything, the CNC machine, all of it fit in a space the size of our dirty room here.
Yeah.
Which sounds great. They had this big shop with all this space, but in the first year, we put everything around the perimeter, and you have a desk at each corner, and you set a tool down, and then you walk to the opposite corner and realize, shit, I forgot my tool. Right. You walk back over there, and you make that trip 10,000 times a day.
Yeah.
And finally, I decided, okay, let's move our desks into the middle of the shop, and that'll cut our commute in half. If we walk to the corner, we've only walked half the distance. Right. So you can have too big of a shop, I guess. We'll eventually fill it with machines and cool stuff, but
Yeah.
first world problems again, I guess.
Right.
My shop's too big. Wah.
One bay of a garage is like 20 by 20, right? So 400 square feet. So yeah, 19's big.
Yeah, it was a big upgrade for us, and we're excited about it. It's nice.
So what else are you going to do in the shop? You've mentioned like a knife camp. What might that possibly be?
Yeah, we're looking at doing a little knife camp. We had it's kind of this old dilapidated shed out back that tore completely down to the rafters and then rebuilt as like a little cabin. And the idea is guys fly out Friday, pick them at the airport, come stay here. We'll build a knife from start to finish over the weekend and a bottle opener. And then you stay here in the cabin, eat with us, drink with us, hang out with the family. And then I take you back to the airport Sunday. And, you get a knife and a bottle opener and the experience, and you can see the whole process from start to finish. I think it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's become pretty popular these days. People want to see how stuff's made.
I know I enjoy it.
What's the motivation, Nick? Is that part of that pay it forward idea plus, it's kind of a fun social thing too, right? Actually have people come and participate and do stuff.
Sure.
There's
I can
obviously
remember.
a business angle to it too, right? So is kind of all that stuff put together or?
Yeah. We will make it worth our time. Obviously, the cost of the knife is factored in, and then a few nights. And I just had such an amazing time, going out and spending time in Richard's shop and seeing his process and learning. And I mean, if it's something that guys are genuinely interested in becoming knife makers, I think it could be invaluable. And even if you're not, even if you're just a collector and you want to come hang out, I think we're going to tailor it, based on, if you want to, do you want to grind this knife or do you just want to drink a beer while I watch, while I grind this knife?
Right.
We can tailor it however involved they want to get. Just logistically figuring out if we can actually make a knife in a weekend.
Yeah.
If we can stay on track and get it done.
Yeah.
So once we get that dialed in and once it's not 100 degrees here, I think we'll start having some folks come out.
Yeah. It sounds really fun.
It's just a nice little way to break up maybe in between shows. I know it feels like we've got a show every 4 or 5 weeks now. So that's getting tough, but
It feels that way, doesn't it?
just a nice little break.
Yeah. Well, we had a break for a while, right? And then now it's kind of back in the swing. And so what did so in your case, that big break, right? It was long, right? And for a lot of makers, it got a little weird and in some cases changed how people did business. Maybe in most cases, at least temporarily changed how people did business. What did that look like for you? Like, did that as like and maybe I'm going to say this in an incorrect way, and please correct me if I do, but as like a social media based maker, maybe that's not the right way to say it, but the Facebook group stuff's real strong in what you do, right? So did the COVID thing change for you what you do or how you do it?
Yeah. I'm a pretty hermity kind of guy. I'll stay in my shop for days. I have literally everything I could need here. There's a bathroom, there's a full kitchen. Like I could live out here. There's a bed.
Right.
So I initially really enjoyed COVID. That doesn't sound right. I enjoyed the lockdown. I don't like going out into big, after being a cop, I don't like big crowds. I don't like, noisy, loud places. Like I really enjoy staying home. And for me, it was the excuse to stay home. Like, oh, well,
right.
I can't go to the grocery store. COVID, come on. So I didn't leave the house for a long time. And I pulled in real hard and, I got into like primitive woodworking, with no power and cause I didn't know where this was going to go. Like, do I need to learn how to build furniture for my family? Like what?
Yeah.
What kind of skills do I need to learn immediately at the end of the world? So I pulled in, which was fine for an internet, like you said, a social media based. I think if anything, it brought us in a lot closer, with Zoom meetings. And I think we probably pulled in even harder on the social media during that time. So I'd say business wise, and obviously not seeing people in person, I don't think we realized how it affected us until that first show back, when we're hugging each other and we're like, holy shit, we needed this. Like it has been way too long. So now I'm starting to feel kind of the fallout from that seclusion.
Yeah.
I'm trying to push myself back out into public and, force myself to go to the grocery store and Costco and all these places I dread going now. But it's kind of weird how long it took for me to realize it. That, hey, maybe this isn't a good thing.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad to be back. I'm glad we're back at shows. It's so great.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was interesting to me, like you said, there's this contraction initially, right? Because you're kind of like, hold up, which feels really weird for a little while. And then depending on, like you said, maybe it gets comfortable real fast. Or for some people, it's like, I got to figure out how to do this, right? How do I do this and not go crazy? And then, we ended up doing a little bit of like Zoom interaction kind of stuff, right? Like happy hour stuff. We did a couple of those kind of things.
Yeah.
And it was like, whoa, right? It like twists your brain a little bit. Like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool, right? And it's just, I don't know, it's bizarre because it's like you get a little glimmer of what it's going to be like when you can actually hang out again, right? And it's not the same by any stretch, but compared to what we were all dealing with, it felt pretty awesome anyway, right? Like, wow, this is kind of cool. So I think a lot of people look at it like it was this whole thing was just a terrible thing. I think lots of people took things away from it, right? Like figuring out, how do you actually hang out all the time with your spouse?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or your kids, right? Like, no kidding. Your kids aren't out doing stuff. They're not gone a lot like they were doing sports or activities or, scouts or whatever it is they do. You got to hang out with your kids, right? And you got to learn how to make that work. There's value in that, right? That I think sometimes is a little bit overlooked, but
Definitely some positives.
So on your shows, how many do you do a year? And how do you plan on doing those in the future? More or less?
Oh, yeah, it does seem like there's a lot of shows that just keep getting added. And I know it's going to be tough for attendees, to kind of pick and choose which ones are their favorites and which ones can they afford to miss this year. I mean, do we start alternating, every other year I do Blade? Or for me, we do Blade, the USN show. We did do New York and the Kentucky show. Those are kind of the big four for us. I think we'll continue with those. We've done the California show, and we might try that again. And the Texas show looked like a lot of fun. Might try that.
yeah, you were really heavily fall loaded, right? Where you'd go a bunch of months and then bang, all stacked up.
Yeah, it's like once a month or 5 weeks, I think we've got something lined up. It's pretty busy.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a whole lot.
Well, and with the fall New York show going away forever, and kind of the change in the landscape of the TKI world, and Sacco doing his shows, and Nick and Billy doing the Portland show, and there's the landscape's changing a little bit, right? It's it seemed like for a bunch of years there was sort of like a standard calendar, right?
Yeah.
And occasionally a new show would come along, or it's like, okay, here's the same promoter that does this other show, they're just going to add one somewhere. But it's been shaken up quite a bit. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it comes out.
Yeah. I'm not sure where and what where I'm going to be next year.
Michael says he wants to do more shows next year.
What?
What?
That's what he told me. Isn't that what you said?
Wow.
Who's this now?
More shows?
That's what I said. Who is this exactly? Which Michael are you talking about?
Well, he's doing like 20 shows this year.
Seems that way. I got to slow it down next year. I'm ready for a nap come November or whenever that's supposed to be.
You're taking a long winter's nap.
You've done a lot
sure.
of shows this year, and you've still got a few left, I think, right?
2 more, yeah. 2 more to go, and then I'm all finished up.
Wow.
Till February, maybe.
Yeah.
Nice.
What's on the show thing, Nick? What about likes, dislikes? Like, what's the best part of the show, and what's the annoying part of the show, or what's the part you like less?
Sure.
Some people love the different pieces of it. So what is it for you?
For me, the best part of the show is hanging out with the people. It's generally Thursday night. We all are getting in, and everybody's super pumped to see everybody, and anxious about the show. And we usually end up probably partying a little too hard Thursday night before the show,
Right.
which generally makes Friday and Saturday night a little harder to party because we've already partied too hard Thursday. Yeah, that first night is always a lot of fun. But I mean, every night's fun. We have like a strict midnight bedtime, and that keeps us fresh for the next day, which is something we've learned from doing a couple shows. But yeah, I really enjoy the people and hanging out, and at the end of the day, your face hurts from smiling and talking so much, and I I'd say least favorite is probably the concrete floors at Blade a few years ago. We've since moved into the new room where there's AC, but the smart guys will have like a little foam pad or something they stand on. And man, 3 days of concrete, it just crushes you.
Yeah.
But if that's really the worst thing I have to complain about with this job, like not getting shot at or spit on,
right?
It's a pretty sweet day.
Yeah. No, I agree. The social piece is a lot of fun. And that's one where, we often on the show talk about how if people haven't gone to a knife show before, just go do it and see what it's like. And yeah, it's not cheap. And yes, you're going to have to set aside vacation time to do it. And trust us, you're going to love it, right? It ends up being really fun, especially if you're willing to kind of come outside your shell a little bit, meet some new people, and it can be a wildly rewarding experience, right? From a friendship and fun perspective, for sure.
Yeah. Finally meet all those weirdos you talk to online. Face to face.
Right. And sometimes it's like, wow, that guy's even weirder than I thought. And other times it's like, wow, that person's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you go to a show and it's your first show and you see a group of people talking, introduce yourself.
Yes.
And I think we've said that before. It's like you might end up finding new people to go have dinner with and make new friends. Everyone's usually pretty easy to deal with and hang out with.
Yes.
I think that was one of the beautiful things of the USN. When you came to a show, you had your USN badge and you're like, holy shit, that's so-and-so.
Yeah.
You know, you instantly felt like you had some weird, a connection,
Yeah, you did, and it was great. I love those days when it was like that.
Yeah.
Yep. Super fun.
Now I can't remember anyone, but.
Oh,
Oh, God, man.
Yeah.
that's for sure. Now, I kind of want to circle back just a hair on your knife making, like your designs. What drives those? Where are they coming from?
So when I design a knife, I don't draw them. I do everything in Rhino in like a CAD program, and I draw with I'll draw with the tools I actually have. So I have a 10-inch wheel, I have a 4-inch wheel, a 2-inch wheel. So I'll start with those circles. I'll draw a 10-inch circle, and I try to draw the knife with the tools I actually have. That way I don't create a radius that I can't grind. If I put some insanely tight turn in that I don't own a wheel to actually get in there to grind, I'll never be able to grind it.
Yeah.
So I try to draw everything based around the tools I actually have, using just lines and curves, and they just kind of intersect, to give me this rough idea of a shape. And then I'll come in and trim off the excess and then just adjust from there.
Yeah.
But it's very abstract, just kind of throwing lines and circles out. It's so tough to draw a knife that no one's drawn before, or to try to make this original in some way. And, you look at it for hours, and then you go on on Facebook and look through a million pictures and try to confirm that you're not drawing the exact same knife that's been done 100 times. But definitely scrapped a lot of stuff that's like, that looks a little close. Let's start over.
Do you generally start with a knife blade in your head, like a shape or a handle that you want to fit the blade into? Where do you approach it from?
No, it's the overall shape. And like I said, it's pretty abstract. Like the actual cutting edge of the blade is definitely the hardest part for me. I try to draw with as few points as possible, when I'm creating a curve. So I don't have just this choppy, faceted, just hard to look at. Like everything needs to flow. The eye wants to connect these lines. So when I'll draw a knife, it's open initially, and I'll look at it, in perspective and different views to try to see proportionally if it looks right and adjust. And then obviously it has to close, and it still needs to look good. And those lines need to flow open and closed. So I just try to, as I'm looking at the knife from front to back, is there this abrupt turn or line that it's hard to look at? It's aesthetically not pleasing. And I just try to, just keep that flow going. And hopefully when I'm done, it actually resembles a knife. But I tried to make one design a year is my goal. And I'll end up drawing, 3 or 4 knives, and I'll pick the one I think I want to roll with. And then I'll just put the rest are in a file.
Yeah.
And, 2 years later, I might be like, oh shit, why did I make this knife? Like, I'm just sitting on these designs. Like,
yeah.
Yeah. Well, my problem is I'll draw another one, then I'll look in my file, then I'll see that I already drew it once and be like, son of a bitch.
Well, now you have to make it if you've done it twice.
Yeah. It's like, well, it must have been stuck in my head. So have you used some of those designs for like production companies? Have you got any of those projects coming up? Or I know you've done some in the past.
Yeah, man. The production stuff came real quick. It's been wild to see how that stuff's blown up.
Yes.
Like I'm kind of looking back at my notes here. I had the first production deal was in 2016, and like my first show was in 2015.
Right.
What in the hell? Yeah, it all happened real fast. I won Best New Maker that next year at the USN Gathering G8, and almost immediately was approached by 2 companies, and I ended up working with Kaiser. It's a Chinese company. And they did great work. I really enjoyed the process. It took a lot longer than you think. We start talking, and like 2 years later is when they actually hit shelves, and that takes time. So the way I looked at it was I would use models that I didn't plan to continue producing, like models that I'm phasing out, just for whatever reason. We're moving into new models, and I don't want to make 15 knives for the show, 15 different knives. So the stuff that we'd phased out, we decided we'd move into production if it was popular and a production company wanted it. And super fortunate and excited that it all happened the way it did. And then shortly after, kind of the best and brightest, I think, from Kaiser moved on and started Concept, which it's spelled Kansept. I for years called it Cancept. Didn't
right.
It's Concept. It's just doesn't really translate very well, I guess. But I've been working with them recently, and man, they do incredible work. It's kind of scary how good it is, honestly.
Yeah, all that stuff out there. I think Justin Koch does quite a bit with them too.
Yeah, a couple makers. They've been really good to us. So it's just wild how fast it all happened, though.
Yeah, that seems pretty quick to 1 year in, and you're like, well, here's a production.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like that's only good, but do you think there's good and bad to it, Nick? I mean, it's a little while ago now, right? That's that time frame. It seems kind of awesome that it happened that way. I'm not sure I see a downside.
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome. I think maybe just, from maybe the makers that have paid their dues, I don't feel like I've really like paid my dues. I haven't gone to shows and, had to go home with all the knives I brought to the show. And
yeah,
I haven't had those hardships and, bumps in the road that I know a lot of amazing makers have, and it's how it's formed them and shaped them, and I'm super grateful for all the success I've had, and I'm sure those days are coming. I'm sure we'll have downs and ups, and but yeah, super grateful for how fast this has all come. It's been wild.
But that's okay too. I don't think you have to have a from the trenches, story to be successful, or, to have a proper outlook on, where you're at and where you're going to go.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? Nick's a pretty humble guy when it comes to that stuff. Right. And that makes a big difference. I mean, maybe part of it is remembering to be that way, right? Or recognizing that, this isn't. Yeah, a lot of people go through that. We've seen it, right, repeatedly. People have that kind of success very quickly, and obviously it's because they're the best thing since sliced bread, period. So let's go, right? And there's some reality check to some of that, and sometimes that comes and it's hard to deal with and whatever. So I don't know. Part of it is, I guess, looking at it the way that you do, and maybe, I don't know, Richard Rogers is probably the most, probably the most humble guy when you talk to him about what he does and his capability compared to the actual work that he does, right? Which is entirely next level. Guy not giving himself enough credit, probably, right? By any stretch of the imagination. So maybe studying with a guy like that helps too.
Yeah, I've tried to learn as much as I can. And being a collector first, I think, has really helped put things in perspective too. Because when for pricing is like the hardest thing. Naming, pricing, and clips. Those are the three banes of my existence. I tried to learn as much as I could from you guys, watching how you guys do business, how you do social media, how you run your sales, pricing, naming, all of this stuff. So I've had a few years up as from a collector side, and I try to think like a collector when I make a lot of these decisions. Like, is this something I would even like? How much would I be willing to pay for this thing?
Right.
I think that's helped. I'm not a machinist. I don't have a machinist background. I don't think like a machinist. When I design a knife, I'll cut a set of parts and create a prototype and then make changes and cut another set of parts. Like I'm not going to set up a pallet to create 100 of this thing. And I just don't think that way. I create just what I need. I got a show coming up. Okay, I want to make 4 of this model. I'll cut 5 in case I screw one up. And that's it. Mm-hmm. And I don't make, 200 of something. I don't think I've ever made 50 of anything other than the pull tab, the bottle openers. But
yeah,
when it comes to knives, I'm just so fortunate that I'm able to make what I want to make and it actually sells, and I get to keep doing that, and just super grateful every day to keep doing that.
I think that's the good way to look at it. What's weird is like I collect knives, but I don't collect, obviously my own knives. And I was thinking about this past year when I had to raise some prices on some of my knives, and I was like, I keep thinking, man, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not buying my knives. That's me looking at it going, that's a lot of money for that. Isn't how a customer may be looking at that. It's very weird for me to wrap my head around and be like, man, because I still think, like $400 is a lot of knife or a lot of money sometimes.
Yeah.
It's hard to get your mind over to the business side sometimes to be like, it's okay to have that price because you're not the buyer.
And Nick's point's a really good one, right? I think he's got enough recency as a collector it's not the same kind of disconnect, right? He was buying the same kind of knives that he makes today, or you make today, or Tom makes today, or Sean makes today, right? So there's good value in that. It sounds like it's still a challenge for you on pricing, Nick. We did a pricing episode early on in the podcast run about how difficult it was, and to try to explain to listeners a little bit about why are knives priced the way they are, right? Or some of the logic, because it's all different depending on the person, right? On how the pricing comes together. For you, do you try to make it a formulaic thing, or is it more of a, Michael's version at one point was kind of like, this looks like about a $750 knife.
Yeah, that was dumb.
Pricing is so hard. I try to price everything literally as low as I can afford to continue making it, but not to the point. We all devalue our own work, and we don't think it's worth probably what it's actually worth. And it's really hard for me. I try to keep that like just the broadest base that you can, because I think once that price gets, up into that extreme niche market, you've lowered your potential clients to, a very small pool. So I try to keep my pricing, at a level where it's like, wow, this is a value for a custom knife. Like, this is a hand ground knife. I want them to be like, damn, this is a good deal. And to have some meat on the bone, for the collector for a secondary, which I think is important. Pricing's tough. I think you can't ever go back down. Like, you can't lower your price once you've gone up or set it. So I haven't really increased pricing much, and I do look at my peers and my idols, and I'll never price my stuff above theirs, maybe just out of respect. But I'll look at, a contemporary item and try to think what I would pay for it, and then calculate, what it actually cost me to make, material and time, and is it worth my while? And I don't know. It's such a tough number. Pricing and naming. Ugh.
It's personal. It gets very personal because a lot of our collectors are friends, or they become friends down the road, and it's like,
right.
For me to make more money means you have to spend more money, and that it's kind of hard to get over that sometimes.
Yeah, the catch-22 of being accessible to your collector base, right?
Yeah.
It becomes a lot more personal. It isn't just, I'm going to put it out there and some nameless, faceless person's going to spend the money and, right, I do my thing.
Yeah.
No, it might be your pal that you just had beers with, right? Or you're heading to dinner with. And it's like, oh, shit, am I charging him that much money for that knife?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It gets strange. Now, do you still collect stuff?
I do, but the majority of my collection, pretty much anything I paid for, has been sold to purchase new equipment. The only knives left in my collection are, knives that were given to me, or just really special ones that I purchased and have still hung on to. I think the last knife I bought was one of the Tom Mayo, the Wingman, with Lee Williams. Really cool knife.
Yeah.
Super cool knife.
Yeah, that's a fun project. It used to be a thing with makers to do like a trade thing, right? I'll make you something, you make me something. That doesn't seem so common in the last couple years. Maybe it's because I only know, because I'm only regularly talking to, 8 or 10 makers or something, but that used to be a really popular thing.
Yeah.
At least with my friends.
It was.
Yeah.
Not anymore?
I'd almost rather just
time.
buy it. I don't know.
Yeah. Would you say, Michael?
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know what happened with that.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a knife maker. I was going to say we should bring it back. Well, it's not my thing. I don't make knives, but I'll give someone riding a really cool Corvette. They can make me a knife. That'd be great. That's close as I can offer. Sorry.
I want to do some of the testing where we go really fast and jam it in reverse.
Ooh.
It's a thing.
Just push it till it breaks.
That's right. If you didn't break it, you don't know what it's capable of. Bam.
True.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, let's see. What else we got? Production projects we talked about. What about stuff in the shop? It's always interesting to me to hear what people dread doing in the process and what people really enjoy doing. And like for some people, it's like, oh, hand rubbing a blade, it's this Zen moment for me. And other makers like Tom are like, oh my Lord, I can't stand hand rubbing a blade. That's the worst. I'd never do it. So what about for you, Nick? What do you like?
I'm just going to tell you, it'll tear up your hands too.
It's just not healthy. You shouldn't do it.
It's a problem. I mean, I'm really having issues with my hands, and I just can't hardly do it.
Niels Vandenberg from South Africa, he had a post the other day about hand sanding one of his crazy daggers that he does, which are just drop dead gorgeous. And yeah, he was like, he took a break from hand sanding or something. And he's like, oh, right, this was supposed to be fun, right? This is supposed to be the fun part of the process. And it's like, oh, it's awful. So what about for you, Nick? What do you like doing, and what do you dread doing in the process? Is there anything in there that just is like, ugh?
Yeah. Let's see. So for dreading, I used to cut locks on a grinder. I used to grind them freehand, just walking up to a grinder and, man, I hope this is lined up perfectly because I have no idea.
Right.
So cutting locks freehand was my absolute most dreaded moment of a knife. And for me, it was the absolute, and I probably was putting it off to the very last step, but I would put it off till damn near the last step. I mean, the blade's ground, the knife is finished. I just need to cut the lock. And after ruining a few of those, you grind a little too far and then now it's at 100%. Or you grind it at some wonky angle and it sticks like crazy or just it has lock rock or something.
Yep.
So hand grinding lock faces was the absolute worst for me. I worked up the courage to send Michael Walker a message on Instagram a couple years ago.
Ooh.
I figured, if anybody knows how to do it, it's probably this guy. And he let me in on how he does it. And I kind of built a little jig real similar to his. And I start machining the lock faces now. I just come across with a big ass 1/2-inch carbide cutter and in one swath start working my way down and cutting the lock face. And I do it on the machine because I'm able to make 10,000ths increment changes repeatedly. So if I cut one blade and I get the lock absolutely dialed in, I can just write those numbers down and then pop the next blade in to this jig and come down and boom, cut the exact same lock. And with the CNC, I'm able to achieve that kind of repeatability, and it completely took the dread out of locks for me. It just changed, you're just super anxious and worried and that you're going to ruin this knife you've got hours into, and this new method has completely changed everything for me. So that was worst to best, actually. I guess it answered both questions. But honestly, the best thing for me, and it comes back to the CNC machine, is I can have an idea of something I want to make, and usually by the end of the next day, I've already got it kind of worked out how I'm going to do the CAD and the CAM. I can run in, knock those out, and start cutting parts. And by the end of the next day, I can have a working prototype in my hand. And the ability to take an idea to a functioning product in a day just blows my mind every time I do it. Mm-hmm. Like, it's what a cool tool.
It is. It really is.
Yeah. Just think about how cool that situation is. So I reached out to Michael Walker, right? Whoa, like what? Oh, the guy, right? The guy who invented it.
Right. Yeah. I read this book he wrote on it before, and it has
so,
some good stuff, but I wanted some modern answers.
Here's like this modern world, right? Where you can like literally reach out to anyone on planet Earth, almost anyone, and seemingly anyone. And, I'll just go to the guy, right? The king, the master, the big dog. I'll go directly to him and I'll just, hey man, how do you do that? And how fucking cool is it that he just helps you? That's amazing.
Right. You might have to retitle this one First World Maker Problems. This is
Nick Swan's Charmed Life. That's the new name of this
Pretty much, yeah. Right place at the right time.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Oh, let's see what else. What else we got here? Michael, you got another one from your list? You still got hundreds of questions left.
Well, we probably ought to hit some of the fun ones.
Yeah, fun ones. You're right.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to do...
Nick's feeling nervous. Oh, no. Fun ones.
Yeah.
Well, it knows what that means.
All right. Who in knife history, dead or alive, would you most like to spend a week in the shop with? Like, if you
Pat
could.
Pruitt.
Whoa.
Done deal.
That was fast.
Oh, yeah, it was.
Yeah. I think he is, I don't know, probably the greatest living American artist. Incredible work. Just totally blown away with everything he does. It would be a real treat to go spend and learn as much as I possibly could from him.
Yeah. That's a good answer.
And he's a super good dude.
And super good dude, yeah. Always been super nice.
Really smart.
Pat Pruitt. So for people who... We did an episode with Pat Pruitt, 2 episodes actually. Great discussion. I thought super, super interesting. And I know that there are listeners who didn't recognize his name as a knife maker, right? Because he doesn't done a lot of knives, who kind of skipped it, right? Because it's like, oh, it's an artist guy. Explain to people why they should go back and listen to the Pat Pruitt episodes.
I mean, it's his style of art I mean, not just the Native American side of it, but just his art in general, and the way he can take just a simple piece of stainless steel, and I mean, even rebar. He's making jewelry out of rebar that looks phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, just incredible sense of style, an eye for it. Just simple materials. Like it doesn't have to be over the top. Just a little Zerk and some stainless, and
Right.
just blow your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's a fantastic eye, right?
Couple guys I can think of. Bathgate would be absolutely mind blowing.
Yeah.
Just to see the way he thinks and the things he can do with a lathe. Pure art. Dmitry Sinkovich would be incredible.
Yeah.
I think he's really pushing boundaries in knife making.
Yeah, stuff that's like, wait, what? He machined
Yeah,
that? How
right.
exactly?
Yeah, it's like Geiger-esque.
Yes.
Just very, man, really cool stuff. Those three guys, I don't know that Bathgate's from this planet, honestly. The stuff he comes up with.
No.
Wow.
Did you see that latest knife
Yes.
art?
Holy hell. And things move and click, and there's magnets, and
Yeah.
like the three-dimensional thought process behind all that engineering is amazing.
Yep. Whole different ball game entirely.
So I guess I'm like not naming knife makers.
That's all right. But that's cool, right?
Yeah.
That's sort of like that's an interesting insight of its own, right? It's like here's people doing things, and that's one of the beautiful parts about this, and that's what I really like about Pat's perspective on it, right? Is it doesn't have to be in his genre or his wheelhouse or his style even, right? It's like he's unafraid to go understand and learn and stretch, and man, if only we could all be that open to learning and change, how cool would that be?
Indeed.
Sean, you got a question you want to ask? A fun question before we wrap it up?
Yeah. Man, you got a movie knife?
Ooh.
Movie knife. That's always a good one.
Yeah. Yeah.
We haven't talked movie knives in a while either. So.
But we have.
Yeah. Growing up, when you saw that Corelco logo come on, like you knew it was going to be amazing. Stallone, Schwarzenegger. Yeah, probably the Rambo knife. It's probably like an easy answer, I guess. But growing up at that time, like every kid, I wanted a hollow handle survival knife with a saw back. I think every kid wanted that knife.
Mm-hmm.
That's an easy answer. Sorry, I could probably think more on that one.
But it's a good answer.
It's an honest answer.
Yeah. I think probably number one answer for 75% of guests on the show, right?
Really?
That's how iconic, right? But I mean, that's a statement, right, on its own. How iconic that whole thing was for so many people, right? And maybe it's a generational thing, right? For sure, there's some generational aspect to it, but still, it's just, I don't know.
I have a follow-up answer, and it's Kroll.
Yeah.
The five-bladed. Nice.
Yeah.
What do you even call that thing?
A glaive is what they called it, I believe.
Nice.
Yeah. Sean knows what's up.
Glaive from Kroll.
You can't slide one past old Sean dog over there.
Yeah, if it's about nerdery.
It is in his wheelhouse.
Nice.
I mean, I may have watched a 45-minute video on YouTube about that movie 2 weeks ago. Who knows?
Maybe
You
not.
have to send me that one.
What about you, Tom? You got a fun question you want to ask here at the end?
Man, I don't know. I was more interested in not necessarily a fun one, but a shop question.
That's all right. Fire away.
Like I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Like favorite steel, and then favorite tool other than like CNC or your lock fitting fixture.
Yeah. Favorite steel, hands down, CTS XHP.
Great steel.
Purely for the 2-hour temper. It's just really nice to have, not your whole day chewed up heat treating and tempering. But yeah, really good stuff. Man, I wish I could find it an 1/8 inch anywhere. Have you guys got anything from Carpenters or SC Specialty?
I think it's pretty much on the way out.
Okay, that's what I was told too.
Talking to Scott, Davana, basically they doubled or tripled the price, and it's like doesn't make sense. It was already fairly expensive.
Yeah.
And it was hit or miss as far as getting it because they do a lot of steel for the car industry. And so if the car industry was going great, good luck getting XHP because they were busy doing other stuff. This wasn't really their thing. And then when they raised the price, so high, it just didn't make sense to economically to bring it in. So what I heard is it's gone. That I got a sheet, and that was the last I've been able to find. And I've still got a few blades that I'm finishing out, but once it's gone, it's gone.
Dang. Yeah, I've got a couple sticks left, but
Kind of what I heard.
Thing that we made up such a small part of their market that it was pretty easy for them to cut the supply off to us.
Yeah, I've actually gave a blade to Daniel and Ben, my son that works in the shop, and then I'm keeping one because I don't know when I'll be able to get any more. So we're all making ourselves, I'm making 3 knives for everybody here.
I guess I'll sit on what I got.
Wow.
Keep one back for yourself.
Yeah.
I gave a blade to Daniel and Ben and told them each to bury it in the backyard, wrapped in cellophane.
Now I'm going to finish it out for them, but yeah, that way, I mean, it's going away. I think Magna Cut is probably going to be a really good steel. That's going to take it, fill in that slot. But I'm really looking at narrowing down the steels that I use because I've used so many, and I think I'm gonna. It's crazy, but I don't think D2's going to be one of the steels that I use in the folders because it seems like people prefer some of the other stuff for folders, which makes sense. Corrosion resistance is important.
How many Staffordshire Terriers out of 10 does Nick get for his answer that is not D2?
Oh, I think that's a great answer. I like XHP is actually very similar to D2. It's kind of like a CPM D2. Honestly, it's CPM D2 and XHP are very similar, but the fact that it has D2 in the name, it will never be as popular as something like XHP because people have conceptions, and even though they're wrong,
It's the stigma.
It's true.
See, that's Tom's answer for every one of them is it's CTS XHP. It's nice. It's nice. It's the steel you take home to your mother. It's the it's the steel that it's D2. It's D2 is what it wants to be when it grows up. That's
the
it.
bad boy of steels.
It is. D2 is a great steel. I love it. I've made thousands and thousands of knives out of it, and literally, I'm thinking about not using it on the folders in the future, which is a weird thing for me.
End of an era.
There you go.
Oh my Lord. Okay.
Well, it's just too many things, and it's like I really like Nitro V. It's a great. I feel like it's a really good steel for those that are in extreme corrosive situations. Magna Cut seems to have a lot of potential, and then I really like a high wear resistance steel like M390. I'll probably use 204P, and yeah, that's we're looking at 3, maybe M4 steels versus all the ones I used in the past.
Literally hundreds.
But you're buying like sheets of steel, right?
Yeah.
Tom's buying melts of steel.
Well, it all depends. Yeah, we get sheets, and like right now, like we need 3 inches wide, so I can just buy bars of 3-inch steel for the mill. Eventually, we're gonna, water jet some stuff is what we're talking about. But right now, we're just cutting it out of coupons.
Nice. What was your follow-up question, Tom?
Favorite tool?
Favorite tool. Yeah.
My go-to most used tool is a Liam Hoffman ball peen.
Awesome.
Wow.
I've got one on my heat treat table. Yeah.
That's how I set detent balls with it. All kinds of hammering takes place with that thing. It's an awesome tool. Definitely go check out Liam's work. Incredible kid.
Great
man, because he's a man now.
Yeah, he ain't a kid no more.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah, back in his little shack shop and
that shop
Eagle
was pretty
Scouts.
efficient.
Man.
It was really cool. I actually went out and hung out with him for a few days.
American hero right there. The American dream.
Yeah. You ever want to be inspired? Look at Liam's story.
Yeah.
Guy's a beast. Need to get him on here.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And then if you know a teacher, tell him about it, because basically his high school teacher told him he would never succeed and all this stuff because he's super smart. And they were like trying to push him towards college. And it's like, man, that teacher needs to be smacked upside the head. Literally a success story. It's crazy.
Yeah. All right. Well, Nick,
Cool.
thanks for taking the time to talk with us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It was really good, Nick.
Yeah, solid.
It's another variation on the theme, right? We love these interviews because everybody's story is so different. Yours is different from any of the other ones we've done, and I don't know. I think it's great. It's great to show people that those differences are there, right? And for some people, it happens real slow, and some people, in your case, right, it happened real fast, which is awesome. And from very, very different paths, and I think that's awesome. Just really cool to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an awesome community. I'm really fortunate and happy to be a part of it. What a great group, the knife community.
Agree. 100%.
Yep.
Glad you're part of it, Nick, and I'll see you in Vegas.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
There you go. All right. Well, thanks again to all of our friends on Patreon for supporting us and keeping the show moving. And to George from AMX, and to all of our friends in the Facebook group. Are you in our Facebook group, Nick?
I think I am.
So you'll have to show us your Microtech and maybe pull out a couple of your...
Oh, yeah. Okay. Take some pics.
Oh, you threw away your drawer of shame.
I did. Yeah, I still have the toolbox, though. I can show you the drawer. I'll put a banana in it for scale.
This is where all my... Yeah, exactly right. This is where all my skeletons lived before I pitched them to the curb. Yeah, that'd be fun. It's always a good discussion in there when we do a show, especially, some of the pick shows are really cool because people share theirs. And sometimes when a maker comes on, like we had Pat Pruitt on, right? There was a guy that's local to him, I think, that has some of his stuff that shared some pictures, which is awesome. So
Cool.
really cool to see all that happen.
I'm definitely in the group. I've seen that stuff before.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, man. And we'll talk to everybody next time.
See y'all.
Thanks, everyone.
Later, folks.
To learn more about our makers, you can find Tom Crine on the web at crineknives.net, in his Facebook group Crine Knives, or in his Instagram account at Crine Knives. For Michael Birch, check birchtreeblades.com, Facebook group Birch Tree Blade Works, or Michael's Instagram at birchtreeblades. For myself and the Raygun Bead Project, we're on the web at raygundivision.com. We have a Facebook group called Raygun Division, or my personal Instagram at msteiner. For those interested in photos, references from the show, or some discussion about the show itself, you can find us on the web at markofthemaker.com, in a Facebook group called Mark of the Maker, or on our Instagram at Mark of the Maker. Last but not least, the ultra cool and haunting background music we use for the show is a piece called Noir Guitar by Stevie's Amp Shack, found at the Free Music Archive and licensed under Creative Commons CC BY 4.0. Thanks for listening.